Welcome to a very special show of Voicepkdotnet, where we take you live to Gaza. We have with us Mr. Raji Sourani, who's a human rights lawyer, a very well known, prominent human rights lawyer, and is residing in Gaza at the time. And while we speak to him, there are reports that there have been bombings in Gaza. Today, a Red Cross building was affected. A COVID lab was bombed. We will speak to him about that. But let me take the opportunity now to welcome him. Thank you so much for joining us on voicepk.net. And let me introduce him first to all of our viewers here. Mr. Raji Sourani is the founder and director of the Palestinian Center for Human Rights, which was founded in 1995 and has gone on to receive international praise and recognition for his research and advocacy role on the Israel occupation of Palestine, as well as its direct intervention on human rights issues in the Palestinian territory. You have been active, Mr. Suravi, in cases of Palestinians representing deportation and in monitoring the conditions of Israeli prisons. You were an Amnesty International Prisoner of Conscience in 1985 and 1988, and a member of the International Commission of Jurists and Vice President of the International Federation of Human Rights. You have also been a recipient of the very prestigious Right Livelihood Award. Well, Mr. Sourani, as we speak, what is the situation really on the ground in Gaza? I know we were able to connect with you on Skype, but there's so many of your colleagues who do not have electricity, who do not have water at this time. How has regular life been affected?
Thank you for having me at your respected program. There is a blanket of terrorism all over Gaza imposed by this criminal Israeli occupation, 2.2 million living in 365 square kilometers, having no safe haven in the entire Gaza Strip, and round the clock, you feel the house you are living in shaking, and the body, I mean, is trembling, not because of anything, but as if Richter, I mean, hit with 7 degrees. It's unprecedented. It's so bloody. The harvest of lives and injuries and the massive destruction everywhere in the Gaza Strip. Last offensive in Gaza was 2014. Quite a lot of war crimes happened, but I can assure you, in 9 consecutive days, we have what we had already in the 51 days in the last offensive 2014. Israel doing that.
So the intensity is much, that's important. You tell us this, that the intensity has been much more than it has been in the past. What is the situation in the hospitals? Do they have enough medicines? I know we're in the middle of a COVID pandemic as well, so that must obviously also complicate matters for you on the ground.
We have very destroyed infrastructure in health sector, medicine. I mean, mission impossible. I mean, to come in. Those who can leave life-saving cases, and many of them, I mean, die before they leave, or after they leave, I mean, they come as corpse because it's in a very late stage. So the medical situation, I mean, the Gaza catastrophic. And this is by itself a war crime, and this is due to the Israeli sanctions against Gaza, the Israeli blockade on Gaza. Israel, even COVID-19 lab, the only lab, I mean, in Gaza we do have, they bombed it and they destroyed it, I mean, a few days ago. And that's Kafka. I mean, it's like in 2014, they targeted hospitals, operation theaters, labs. They have no limits for their cruelty and the criminality.
But do you have any hope from the courts? And I do know I asked this question to you before. I ask it to you again because there was an ongoing case of Sheikh Jarrah, the 4 evictions that were going to take place, and the lower courts had allowed the eviction of 4 Palestinian families. and then the case from Sheikh Jarrah, and then the case went to the Supreme Court. There was going to be a hearing on May 10th, which was postponed by the Israeli authorities. You have been part of international organizations, of legal bodies. Do you have any hope from the courts that exist today in your territory?
Definitely not. We have no hope that under occupation you can have just or fair justice. You can have equity. You can have rule of law. What Israel applying, rule of jungle vis-a-vis Palestinians. Law, they apply it like old Rome. There is law for masters, not slaves. We are the slaves of Israel. We have no law to protect us. And that's why nobody, can think of just or fair occupation, ever. Wasn't anything like that. And for me, if you ask me why I do this, because everybody was talking long time ago very highly about the Israeli legal system. And they said, at least you cannot prejudge that, you have to try it. Now, after all these years, more than 40 years of experience, I can say with a very reconciled heart and mind, never ever you can achieve justice under this legal system for Palestinians.
So, what are your expectations now from the International Criminal Court? Because they have just made a comment and said that we are looking at the situation in Israel, Palestine, we are looking at what is happening in that region. The response is it to your satisfaction?
ICC is not political body, it's legal body. And it would be fantastic if it took, as Rome Statute applies, preventative measures. They accepted our case. And as a leader of the Palestinian legal team who represent victims in the ICC, I'm very proud for the courage and independence of the ICC prosecutor and judges. Pre-trial decided and prosecutor decided to open an investigation for the alleged war crimes Israel perpetrated in Gaza, including Jerusalem. And these war crimes, as we proven it, so far, it's related to the offensive of 2014 and the settlements policies, including Jerusalem, the pillage for Palestinian resources in West Bank, Jerusalem, or in Gaza, and the blockade on the Gaza Strip. Besides that, which is, form of persecution. And finally, the Great March of Return and the willful killing and injuries Israeli dead to the civilian demonstrators. Now, these files are very important. There is decision to open investigation in it. It's underway, but definitely, this war, landmark, unprecedented, as I said before, because civilians and civilian targets are in the eye of the storm. They targeted residential towers, media towers, banks, police station, clinics.
There is a question that I must ask you, is that the Israeli position remains that in those buildings were Hamas leaders. And they were hiding in those buildings, and actually they were the targets. That is something that they have said over and over again to the world as well. And they also said that they have shown evidence of that to the Americans, especially of the building that they bombed, where Al Jazeera and Associated Press were transmitting their news.
Definitely, no. Definitely. If they were, name them. Name them. Mm-hmm. Whose leader they killed in these towers? Two, if you are targeting Hamas or jihad leaders, and you want the people to evacuate, are they going to stay? But they warned in advance, evacuate the place. And that's very silly. Israel have very sophisticated, orchestrated lies and allegations. It's not true. Even if I will take what Israel say rightly, there is leaders of Hamas inside these towers. They have no right, according to international law. They cannot ask us to be good victims. They cannot ask us to give up. Palestinians do have dignity, and they have a pride, and they are human beings, and they're suffering pain and blood wholly, like any human being suffering. We cannot compromise that. It's not a human to compromise that, and we will fight for the dignity of our victims, women and children.
What is the hope for you as a Palestinian, as a human rights activist for your people? How can the world help?
Hard time pushes either or, to give up or to stand for a challenge. We have no right to reward the criminals. We have no right to give up. All what Israel trying to do to take the hope from our hearts and minds and make us, giving up, or to act with the rule of jungle. We have no right to be good victims. We are entitled for self-determination. We are using this fourth dimension, which shows our legal, moral superiority on a criminal occupation, and we will resort to all ways and means as a human rights activist, precisely ICC and UN mechanisms, as part of our struggle to show the cruelty and the criminality of Israel and its belligerent occupation.
But what would be then the long-term solution? I know the two-state settlement is not acceptable to the Palestinians.
No, two-state solution is acceptable. Who said it's not acceptable? This is what has been accepted by international community. And this is UN resolutions. These are the unalienable rights of the Palestinian people. Israel, which are trying to make two-state solution mission impossible. We want two-state solutions. Now, if we say we want one-state solution, Israel would say, all right, they want to kill us. They want to destroy us. They want to destroy the state of Israel. We don't mind, one-state solution. Actually, PLO statute in 1965, in a clear-cut way, said we want one Palestinian democratic state for a Christian, Muslim, Jews, and based on citizenship with equal rights. Israel wants the Jewish state. The Jewish state. We, for them, don't exist. We are not the Aboriginal. We don't exist. We didn't descend from the sky, and no power on earth can take us from here. We existed, and we will continue with that, and one day we shall overcome. It's very costly.
What are you going to do about the Jewish settlements? Would you accept, as many say, a moth-eaten Palestine where there are settlements?
Why we confuse ourselves too much with the settlements? ICJ, International Court of Justice, said in simple words in its advisor opinion, settlements illegal. The annexation apartheid was illegal. And they should evacuate. Transferring population, it's war a crime. It doesn't need political argument. It's simple answer. Even the Israeli human rights organization like B'Tselem, saying this is a new brand of apartheid. This is a criminal. apartheid, and they ask accountability for the suspected war criminals in front of the ICC.
I do realize it's perhaps one of the most difficult territories to be a human rights activist. Thank you so much for joining us on this program on Voicepkdotnet. We hope that we can continue speaking to you during this crisis, during this conflict, to bring what is happening in Gaza, in the Palestinian territories, to Pakistan, to show our people what is happening there. Do give us your feedback for this program. Thank you so much, Mr. Raji Sourani from Gaza.
One last word.
Thank you,
Be
sir.
sure we are strong enough, but we are much more stronger with the support of free, committed people like you, like the people of Pakistan, and like people across the globe, in South Africa, New York, DC, in Paris, in Vienna, in London, in Madrid. We have no right to give up.